can see. All right, we're being recorded. All right, hello, Haza. Good afternoon to everyone. Good. Hey, Eliane from Sao Paulo. All right. Hey, Deborah. Hello, hello. Good to have you guys here. Hope you didn't have to wait too much, but at least in online events, there's always coffee if you made some for yourself, right? All right, good afternoon. Hello, Zele, Luis. Good. Pleasure to be here with you. Thanks, Disal, for making this possible. All right, from Lima, Peru. Hello, yeah, Julissa Acayuso from Rio Grande do Norte. All right, cool. All over Brazil, some places in Latin America too. Hey, Jose, hello. You can't hear me? Um, okay. Can you guys hear me? Is it working? Yes, okay. All right. Check your settings then. And then if you guys cannot hear me or cannot see me, if there's something wrong with my internet and I don't realize it, please send it here via chat. A little bit of, okay, Aline loves flipped learning. Okay, let's see if we can make it a good one today, eh? Good. Hello, and for those of you who are arriving now, welcome. I'm Gabriel Ribeiro from Troika. Thanks, Disal, again for making this webinar possible. A little bit of housekeeping before we dive into flipped learning. I enabled here the question and answer mode here. So if you want to ask questions, you can send them here. And then there's a specific button for you to send it as a question. Or you can send messages via chat, comments, whatever you want. Interrupt me at any time if you have those questions. I'll try to address them as we go. But I will some time at the end so we can cover the most frequent questions or the most pressing questions here. All right? Good. Hello, hello, everybody. So today we're talking about flipped learning. I entitled this The Pandemic Push because, well, we have been in a pandemic of sorts. We're still going through uh, difficult times, really. For the past 2 years, we have done a lot of things online, like the webinars, for example. Oh, from Egypt, hello, hello, internationally, flipping internationally, yeah. So we've done this online teaching, online courses and everything. And it is my contention that this pandemic has made it a little bit, has brought flipped learning a little bit more to the front lines of the. We, of course, we have been talking about flipped learning for a while, but thank you very much. But we need to, we have needed to do it a little bit more, take it to the next level, so to speak. And a lot of schools were faced with two possibilities, basically. They could either close, a lot of them did, or they could have more online practice and more offline instruction. And so this is what we're going to address today, a little bit of what flipped learning is, a little bit of what it's not, and the main advantages and the challenges that flipped learning can bring to education. I'm going to focus a little bit more on teaching English as a foreign language, because this is my area of expertise. But what I want to make clear throughout the webinar is that this can be applied to a lot of different areas in education. So we are going to uh, see how they can be, how they are impacted, and how flipped learning can actually make education a little bit more engaging and a little bit more effective. Yeah. So the main question here is, what is flipped learning, right? What are we talking about when we are talking about flipped classes? For a lot of people, this might be obvious. For others, there might be a clear idea, but maybe it's not exactly everything that flipped learning can be. So flipped learning, in a nutshell, involves subverting what a traditional class usually does. And here we're talking about the the order that we usually have in traditional schools. So for example, we would usually go from the instruction, so the input that is done in class, and then practice that it's done at home, right? And this goes for English classes, but this also goes for math classes, science, you name it. Usually what we have is we have the teacher there in front of the class or in front of the computer, explaining, for example, how you use Bhaskara, right? So the teacher will give you the formula, tell you a little bit of how to use it, and then you have some practice in class, and then homework to be done at home, right? Uh, I've learned math this way. I've learned English that way. This is how instruction is usually done, right? And then in a flipped classroom, we basically switch it, and we have this instruction being done at home and the practice being done in class. And what this means specifically for English teaching, and for other things that need, other subjects that need a lot of meaningful practice, even math, is that the moments that are spent in class focus a little bit more on performing the task, practicing what has been taught, and most importantly, with error correction and with the solving of questions, right? Asking questions and answering them. So this moment in class is better spent instead of just instruction that can be done offline, right? Uh, so when we talk about flipped classrooms and flipped learning this way, we're talking about switching a little bit the way that we traditionally do. We're still following the same order, obviously. We still have the instruction, and then we have the practice, but we are going to make use of the time that our students have at home or whatever without us, so they can optimize the time that they spend with us, right? Is this in line with what you expect from flipped learning? Does this make sense so far? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Danny. So this is the basics of it, right? However, and this is something that we usually see. This is something that for a lot of places might be this might sound familiar to you. No problem. Uh, uh, Sometimes the flipped part here is basically just a pre-recorded video. Sometimes it's just a text, and it doesn't really cover all the things that we understand by instruction, right? So we know that the instruction part that we have in class, the things that the teacher is doing there, the explanation and the examples that we provide, these things cannot be replaced just by giving students a text to read, right? Or even just a video. Even if it's a video, it needs to be carefully constructed so it's going to work as a substitute to the instruction that we usually have in class. And this is extremely challenging because, of course, we're within a certain genre when we are teaching live, and a different one when we are teaching something that is pre-recorded, right? It's the same. Uh, it's analogous to what we have when we have, for example, a live conversation with a lot of circumlocutions, a lot of re-explaining and everything, and when we have a pre-recorded conversation that is very straightforward. Yeah. So uh, we even though this is in a nutshell flipped learning means, even though this is simply switching one thing for another, the reality is that this takes a lot more work, and it's a little bit more complex than a lot of people who are not in education might realize, right? Because we cannot just, for example, record a live class, and expect it to work as a substitute for instruction for other students who weren't able to participate, for example. Yeah. However, this is one of the most popular ways to flip the classes. Yeah. So this needs to be worked on. So in other words, what are we talking about with flipped learning? And I got a quote here. This is the Flip Learning Network is a group of people who discuss. It's kind of like a study group of sorts. And the key thing here is that no matter uh, you can have many different ways to approach education, approach teaching, but we're fundamentally talking about moving direct instruction from the group learning space to the individual learning space. So instead of doing this in one class with 30 students, each student is having this done individually, fundamentally at their own pace, right? And the group space is then transformed. It becomes a dynamic, interactive learning environment. So uh, even though we can express this in a very simple way, we can just say, okay, in traditional class, we do instruction here and practice there. In flipped classes, we do the opposite. What we are doing is we are changing the space of the instruction that is taking place, and we're changing the space in which practice is taking place. Yeah. So the educator in this case guides the students so they put the concepts into practice and engage creatively. So uh, we are working here, and this is another buzzword, right? Which is the teacher as a facilitator, right? We're talking a lot about making classes in which, designing classes in which uh, we are allowing students to express themselves, we're allowing them to have their own questions and research the things that they are more interested in. And here, what we are talking about is we are providing our students with all the content, all the instruction beforehand. So when they come to class, we can put that into practice and they will have the resources to engage in the text, in the tasks that we give them. Yeah. Uh, okay, I see that that you're sending some questions here. If I can answer them in this moment, I will put them here. The one that Bruno sent and Regiane, I will cover in a minute. Okay, I'm not forgetting you. Okay. So here, what we're saying is we're sure we are allowing them to put these things into practice and optimizing the time that they have here. So flipped learning is about this optimization here of time in class, uh, but it's not about making our lives easier. So this is another very common misconception, right? And I'm sure if you have been teaching throughout the pandemic, I'm sure that in one way or another, somebody has already said to you or to a coworker that teachers were not working during the lockdown moments and everything, where in fact teachers were working more than ever, right? Which is impressive because teachers are already a group of people who work more than. But I digress. Uh, Flipped learning is not something that is going to make our lives easier. The fact that we are uh, moving the instruction to be done at home, to be done at their own pace, is that we need to be very, very careful when building the tasks that our students are going to perform because we're not going to be there for them, right? So the preparation is a lot harder, and we we need a different set of skills to evaluate if our students know it or not, right? Uh, I'll I'll answer this one here. Wait, how can I? Sorry, I'm trying to. Even though we've been in pandemic in online classes for 2 years, I don't think I can. Okay, here we go. Uh, no, sorry, I don't know what I'm doing here. Claudette asks here, can it be used on internet online classes? And that's exactly what I wanted to cover here. They can, right? We can move this instruction part to be done offline. And then in the time that we have online, our students can ask their questions, they can interact. If we're talking about English as a second or foreign language, What we're doing here is we're going to give the presentation part of the lesson beforehand, right? We are not going to say, okay, so look at watch this video and look at the examples of simple past here, and now this is how simple past works, the question, the negative, whatever. Now let's practice. This is, in a very simplified way, how I would probably teach simple past, right? You present the language, you have input, then you have the presentation of the language itself, so the grammar structures, the different forms, for meaning, form, pronunciation, and then you have controlled practice, and then you have some a little bit freer practice. Yeah? What we are doing here would be we would move all the preparation, all the presentation part to be done at home. And then we are going to allow them to ask questions in the past. We're going to have them talk about their holidays, whatever, in class. Yeah. And this can be done in online classes as well. Yeah. Uh, uh, I'll go there, Josemedi. This is a great question. But we are not making our lives easier because uh, we are we need to evaluate in class if they have actually done it or not. Josemedi said here, if normally students do not do homework, would they do activities before class? Yeah. Uh, and yeah, that's the thing, right? If we cannot get them to do homework, can we get them to do that? The answer here would be, it depends. But I think it becomes clearer to students that if they are not doing this, if they are not engaging in the input part of the class, if they're not doing this, they're not attending the class, really. They are doing just half of the class. With adults, I think this becomes a little bit easier to have them do that because you're going to be upfront with them, right? You're going to tell them, okay, look, this is it's impossible for you to have this class, to participate in this class, if you do not do regularly the activities that we assign to be done at home. It's not homework, it's the class. And if they're paying for it, it becomes a little bit easier because you say, okay, look, the workload is, I don't know, 160 hours. 80 of these hours you'll be doing by yourself. So if you don't do these 80 hours, you're basically taking 50% of the course and you're paying the full amount. So you're not going to learn everything that you want to learn. With teens, it becomes something that you need to discuss more with the parents, right? It needs to become, there needs to be a way to have them like, okay, we're going to class now, so to speak. So they put the video there in the computer and they watch their children doing it. Of course, it's not easy. I said it wasn't going to make our lives easier, but it's definitely doable as long as there is transparency there. Yeah, but of course, it's not something that it's going to work for all students, right? We need to be careful there. It is about letting students learn, and here learn in the sense of acquiring the knowledge, specifically not the whole process of learning, because other parts will be done in class, but it's allowing them to learn at their own pace, right? So we want our students to be able to watch the video again, to go back and listen. And if they don't understand one thing, they are going to take a note and they're going to ask us later. There will be resources for them to access. But it's not about spending time on the same content. And here is one of the places I see we it hurts more as teachers as well, because we need to get into this set too. And I'm this is a mea culpa because I failed a lot doing that because we like explaining things, right? I don't know, if you're a teacher and you hate explaining things, then your life must be a lot harder than it should be, because we like telling people, okay, look, this is how it works. Look how wonderful. So, for example, if I'm teaching geography, look at this beautiful formation here. If I'm teaching history, look what these people did 50 or 5,000 years ago, right? These things are cool to do, right? A lot of us became teachers because we like explaining things and helping people to figure some concepts out. So, a very, very common pitfall here is we move all the instruction to be done before class. We have videos, we have resources, we have you name it. And then when we get to class, we teach it again, right? And we go, maybe one student hasn't watched it or hasn't prepared for the class, or even a majority. And instead of moving on and letting them pick as we go, we spend less time explaining this again when we could be allowing them to practice with the content and practice with the knowledge. Yeah. So it's not about spending more time on the content. Uh, we need to to be comfortable with the idea that not all students are going to prepare before class. They're not all going to do the work beforehand, like Josemede asked here. Uh, and that's okay. It's on them. It's not really all on us. We're going to help them as much as we can in class, but we need them to get into that, right? We need them to get aboard. Otherwise, this is going to be a waste of their time as well, right? And here, in the article that I wrote before the webinar, I mentioned this briefly, but if you work with English teaching as a foreign or second language, you might have heard about TTT, which is a way to present language called that's like that it's test, teach, test. Very briefly, test, teach, test means that we're going to check if our students know something. So, for example, if I'm talking about the past, I'll tell them, okay, ask each other about your last weekend. And then I see if they're okay with question formation, with the irregular verbs, whatever. And I only teach the things that they don't know. So I don't spend too much time on explaining because I'm only covering the things that they don't know, right? And students do not come, they know a lot, right? So we can expect this to be a lot shorter, yeah. Uh, and I think flipped learning it works well here because we're doing the same. We're testing very briefly if they have acquired the knowledge, if they have spent the time in the pre-task, and then when we get to class, we cover only the things that we feel that they haven't really acquired well. Yeah. Uh, wait, let me see here. Okay. All right. So that's just about motivation. I'll try to go there at the end. Thais asked, in class, we're supposed to develop activities based on the input that was received previously. Yes. Uh, she wants confirmation here. Yeah. The activities that we're going to do in class, they are based on the instruction, on the input here. They are ideally they are going to first test uh, if they have really learned the topic. So it can be a very short Q&A there. And then we're going to allow them to practice based on that content. So for example, to move a little bit away from English teaching, if we are teaching the colonization of the Americas by the Europeans, and we give them a text and a video to watch and to read about how diseases were very important in subjugating the native peoples of America, right? And then the task that we give them to do in class is going to get some of that knowledge. So, for example, based on what you have watched or what you have read, uh, imagine what would happen if the opposite, if the Native Americans had traveled to Europe first. for example, instead of the Europeans to the Americans, right? So we're going to have them put that into practice in one way or another based on the inputs that we gave them. But yeah, you're correct. That's essentially what we're going to do. And the other thing that flipped learning is about is exactly about using technology to making the learning process more accessible and more flexible. Yeah. So you asked here about if we can use this in online classes. Then absolutely. Our goal here is to use technology in our favor. So we can record the videos, for example, that I am sure that many of you have recorded throughout the pandemic. We can give them more references in terms of websites, in terms of YouTube videos, audio, whatever, and replacing one way or another some things that we would have done in class. Yeah, but not fundamentally replacing this instruction completely, right? So another common pitfall is we give them a video that describes or explains something, and that's it. That's the instruction, right? But in class, we don't usually do this, right? We don't just go in front of the class and say, okay, today we're going to study present perfect, and we go over present perfect. This is how it works. These are some examples. Let's practice. In class, we are going to be to have questions. They're going to have questions. We're going to try to make connections to their reality. So there are a lot of things that are going to happen there. And when we are using technology, in this case, we want to use that too. So, for example, if we are trying to make connections to their lives, so we're going to put a moment there. Okay, now stop for a moment and write down an example about you, right? We need to take this into account here, where there are a lot of off-the-shelf solutions that we can use here, like somebody has already explained this. So watch this video about present perfect from YouTube, for example, and answer these questions here. This is possible, but we cannot expect all the instruction to be substituted by those things that we already have available. We need to anticipate those difficulties that our students are surely going to have when they're doing this. Yeah. Let me go over. Okay, more questions. Yeah, so this goes a little bit in hand with what Bruno asked. How do we ensure sufficient learning during remote learning? Yeah. So, and here is the aspect that I think we need to focus more, because we are very good at recording the explanation. I think we, as a community, we can create very engaging videos for remote instructions and everything. But one thing that we can do here a little bit more is to work on the testing part that can still be done remotely. I'm going to give you an example in a minute, but keep this in mind. Yeah, we're talking about, I think that the key here is, because we're not there with our students while they are having the instruction, right? We need them to still feel that they're being heard and that we care, right? So we are going to put those little questions to test them. We want them to create something the same way we don't in a class just give them a text and say, okay, read it. We want them to react to that text. We need to do this in our tasks that we give them to be done at home, yeah, or whatever. Hejani asked here, yeah, if I think we can do this with beginners. We can. I believe we can do this with beginners, very much so. I think we cannot very easily, but it's not impossible. It's definitely doable. But I think it becomes harder if we insist on instruction being done completely in English. If we are using our first language to do that, to help our students, to essentially make them not be afraid of the classes, right? I'm very, very much concerned about their affective filters here. So I don't want my students to open a page with a lot of instructions about a language it doesn't really speak. And then what do I do, right? So this is a moment I think we can use our first language or their first language very uh, very precisely, so we can pinpoint when we need to use Portuguese in our case, for example. Yeah. So this is something we need to take into account, how they are going to feel when they see this without us. Yeah. Uh, More questions here that we have. Can we, Eliane asked, can we count only on the textbook content to be worked at home instead of using other materials? I'm 72 and I'm not very much skilled to make videos or recording. Excellent question. Yes, I think we can just use the textbook, depending on the textbook, of course. And here, it's a little bit, how should I put it? Uh, Usually we want our textbooks when we're teaching traditional classes, not flipped. We want our textbooks to give us some freedom, right? We want to be able to adapt, to change the order of some activities. We want them to not be so set on stone, right? When we are flipping our classes, the books that have a more straightforward sequence are sometimes more convenient because our student can see that and they go, okay, now I do this, now I do that, and then it becomes a little bit easier. But I would work a little bit, try to work a little bit on recording simple videos, because even the ones that we send via WhatsApp, they can make a big difference, even if it's not to give the instruction itself, but just to give some encouraging words or to give them task instructions instead of explanations of grammar points or stuff like that. Yeah. Elena says, working independently is not part of our educational culture, and some students expect the teacher to teach them everything they need. Yes, that's the thing. Uh, Thank you for the question. How do we deal with that? If you find out the answer, please tell us. But the thing that we can do is, again, this is a negotiation, right? This is a matter of teaching our students to become more independent and showing them the benefits of doing stuff like this. So I think a very uh, uh, a way to deal with that could be, look, uh, the time that you spend with me in class and with your classmates, if it's a group, is the time that you cannot replace, right? So this is the time that we have 1 hour, 2 hours a week, for example, and this is the time that we have together. Let's make the most out of this time. And the way that we make the most out of this time is if I don't have to explain everything during this time, because this you can do it at home. You can do this in the subway, whatever, right? I think that it takes time, absolutely. It's not something you can do, can start today and hope and have all your students participate, but it's something that we can work with our students in long term. Yeah. Carol asked, do you think using materials you already use in class in this at-home input works just as well? Yes, we can use the same materials we already have, but I think this is a question we need to ask to each material individually, right? Does this translate well for individual do-it-at-your-own pace work? Does this, imagine, for example, that our students are going to do this and they are going to set aside some time to do it. Is this something that my student is going to open and think, I have no idea how to start this. I'm not going to do it. Or is it something that they're going to be like, oh, okay, I know what I have to do. The instructions are clear. I can get this over with, right? A lot of the materials that we tend to use are things that might make more sense to us because we're used to them, but they might be very tricky to figure out, especially when you take into account that some people are just going to try to do it without listening for the instructions, right? So I think we can use a lot of the same materials, but I think we need to ask ourselves that every time we select different materials for class. Yeah? Okay, so those are were the questions you sent so far. Okay, great. Keep them coming. Yeah, you'll notice that I do not have all the answers. No, not at all, but we have been again. We have been uh, going through this for a while now, uh, and I have become converted to this because exactly because this image of a traditional classroom is actually something I'm longing for because I don't know about you, but uh, I miss being in a room with 30 students at a time, nobody wearing masks. So, but we might take a while for us to get there. Uh, and the thing is that during the pandemic, we have had to adapt to this kind of scenario a lot more for a lot of reasons. In the early days, it sounds like the pandemic was 20 years ago and not. But anyway, in April last year, for example, or May, a lot of schools were still trying to have the same time of the same amount of hours of instruction, and students were spending a lot of time in front of screens. We still are, but yeah, I guess after a while, we started noticing that if we did that, we would burn out. The pandemic was not going anywhere. It feels like 20 years, yeah. But the pandemic was not going anywhere. So we were in this for the foreseeable future, right? There was no talk of a vaccine, and we were not where we are now, uh, you know. So what we noticed was we wanted shorter periods in front of a screen. And with some of my classes, for example, what we did was I gave them a lot more things to do at home. And they saw it a little bit as like homework, like you said. But for some of them, it really worked. And it became something that in class we would solve some issues that were still unclear. We would have, for example, um, the discussion part of a text. So they would read the text at home and answer some questions, and then in class we would get the reactions to the text. So I think that we do not need necessarily to move all the instruction to be done at home in order for it to be flipped learning. If we can send most of it to be done at home, or most of the reading, or most of whatever it is that you feel can be done at home, if we can do that, then our time in class is going to be better used, and we can spend more time doing the things that require us being there, right? And here I'm talking specifically and most importantly about error correction, something that usually we don't do, right? Something that uh, uh, we do, of course we do, but something that it's harder to find time to do as profoundly as we want to do, as deeply as we want to do. Yeah. So this is something that that I think we could spend more time in class doing. Yeah. Uh, Elena says that the connection between flipped content and what is done in class has to be clear, yes, and intrinsically connected. The first should feed the second. Yes. Yes. So it's a very interesting point that you're raising there. Sometimes we have this disconnection, right, between what is done before class and what is done in class. And I think that this also feeds this sense of students that what we're doing here is homework, right? And it's like homework. So I don't do this for math. I'm not doing this for English. Showing them that this is not really homework, that this is something that uh, is, as you said, intrinsically connected to the practice part, is very, very important. And we are usually very careful, I guess, in traditional classes, not to let students feel like they missed something because they couldn't read the assignment or they couldn't watch a video or whatever. Yeah, it's much more than that. Exactly. I totally agree. Uh, I think that here we need to if we have students who are not performing the pre course task and stuff, we need to address it as we would a student who always arrives in the middle of the class. If we have a 1 hour class and there's a student who always arrives after, well, 30 minutes after the start, we're not going to let that go for 2 classes in a row, right? We can, make we can understand once or twice through a semester, but if something that is being constantly being done, they're missing out on so much. And we need them to be aware of that. Yeah. And so we need to show them, look, the class is whatever, 2 hours long. The only thing is that the first hour you're doing at home at your own pace. The second part is being done in class. If you can't do the first part, you won't be able to make the most out of the second. And I'm talking about the things we learned during the pandemic because I think that this is one of the things we learned. We have adapted to being in charge of our own work and our own study in our own houses, right? People have continued, right? People have students have had classes for the past 2 years, and they have had a higher degree of freedom, right? Uh, they were able to turn off their cameras and do something else, and they probably have noticed that when they did that, the amount of what they got out of the class was reduced, right? So we know that they can do it, so we can encourage them to keep doing it. Yeah. So if you thanks, Elena. That's it. Like if you did it before, why aren't you doing this now? Yeah, that's exactly. And I wanted to show you just to give you a more concrete example of what I mean here. This is an example I gave in a course I gave this well, August, July, I guess. It was a 3-part course that we had at Troika. Uh, Thank you. And here, what we had was my task to the participants was, how would we flip this, right? How would we make it so this this vocabulary lesson would become something that we can flip, right? So, oh, here we go. This is the vocabulary part. As you can see, this is from a National Geographic book. I got this sample from the website, so I just wanted to have an example. It's a good textbook, so I wanted to see how we can adapt it, right? As you can see, there is a big picture here that can be explored in class. There's a text to give to explain vocabulary, to give the vocabulary in context. The task that they need to do is to find a definition, and then they write sentences to practice with the vocabulary. So as you can see, it's a very straightforward PPP lesson. Present the vocabulary, practice a little bit, and then produce in a less controlled environment. And then the grammar that came out of it was unreal conditionals. So we're talking about here B1 students. They find the examples in the text, and then they correct the sentences here that have mistakes, right? So my question for you here is, how would we flip this, right? This was the I'm a very lazy teacher, okay? Not very much so. I want the best solutions, taking into account how much time they are going to cost me, right? So I cannot record videos for each and every class, and I'm not going to design materials for each and every class. If we have a textbook, then let's make the most out of the textbook before we try to reinvent the wheel. people who are much better than me have created this textbook. And the thing that I can do, that I think that I'm comfortable in doing, is adapting this so my group makes the most out of it. I believe that we need to try to find the not only the best solution, but the best solution given the amount of time we have, right? So my question here was, how can I use this as the main source of input, of instruction for my students, right? The solution I proposed here was putting this in the Google Forms. So again, a very straightforward way of doing it. I didn't need to find specific software for it. And basically, what I did here was, how would I teach this in class, right? So I have this page here. What would I do? I'm not just going to say, okay, read the text and discuss the meaning. This can work, but it's not very communicative, right? So the first thing was, look at the picture. What do you know about this, the dinosaur here, right? And the students are going to write it down. They have to think about it. In Google Forms, you can make the fields mandatory or not. So you can make it so they have to answer it to progress, right? And then let's work on the vocabulary. We can give them a task about the text. Here we can go straight to the vocabulary. So read the text. Which of the titles is the most appropriate for it? So I'm giving them something to do as sort of a reading moment. Again, this is something that we would probably already do in class, right? Uh, all we need to do is change it a little bit so it becomes something a little bit more interactive, and it becomes something that our students can do by themselves. These are intermediate students. They're going to read this question. They know what they need to do, right? Then they do the activity and they upload the answers, for example. Yeah. So the only thing that we need to be careful. So you asked, I think Carol also asked, what can we use the same materials? Yes, right? I'm using the same material. I'm using a textbook. The only thing that I need to do is, how can I ensure that my students are going to follow the order that I'm suggesting? How am I going to make it so my students are really engaging in the task the way I want them to, right? And here we're going back to what I said before here. We're using technology to make it more accessible and more flexible, right? I'm giving them the instructions here, and I'm telling them, look, if we do it like this, if you do this, and this is not going to take too long, right? They can find 30, 20 minutes to do this at home. When we get to class, we're going to make the most out of our class and our time together. Yeah? So here we work with the pronunciation and everything. And when we get to grammar, which I gave them an activity to choose the sentences. Yeah. And then the same task that they had there. So in the textbook, they needed to correct the sentences, and in the class, in the Google Forms, they needed to do the same thing. One thing that you can have here, of course, this is in the presentation, it's not in the actual Google Forms, but if you type the answer here, you can have it so Google Forms already checks it for you, right? So students have instant feedback about the grammar part, right? They are not going to get feedback about what do you know about dinosaur, everything, because there's no correct answer. But you can have it so they answer the questions here, yeah? And then the final thing here, if you agree with the sentences, right? In here, I think Elena talked about this, the connection between the tasks that they do at home and the things that they do in class. This is exactly it. The task here at the end of the preparation moment is something that they're going to bring to class. So if they do not take notes about what they think about the sentences, they will need to do this very in class. It's not going to be very fruitful, right? So the connection here needs to be clear. so students can see that this is not as much two different moments in class as it is one long moment in class that starts at home and finishes in the actual classroom. Yeah. So I think that this also allows students to feel a little more uh, to feel like they are actually doing one thing with beginning, middle, and end, rather than a couple of things that are disconnected with one another. Yeah. Um, Hosanna said, I think we're free to design student-centered activities in any way you feel will advance their learning, engagement, and practice of our topic. Yes. So if you have the freedom to do that, absolutely. I think we need to make it. The thing about flip learning, I think, is if done well, and this requires practice, it requires time. It's not something that you can just today we're flipping your class. You need to discuss it with students and everything. But it does allow for a lot of student-centeredness. It allows us to make students a little bit more in charge of the learning process, which is a goal that we have, right? We want our students uh, to be, involved in that, right? We want them to feel like it depends on me. Because it takes a lot of the worry out of our shoulders, right? We want them to be active learners, exactly. We want them to see, look, I can give you the best instruction I can. I will give you the best instruction I can, but the acquisition part depends a lot on you, right? I cannot do all of this alone, right? So this is very important, I guess. Yeah, very good. Uh, I think, let me see, have I covered all the questions you sent here? Uh, yeah, just to go back on that, yes, how do we motivate teens to do homework, to be interested in flipping lessons? This is not, there's no formula, of course, but I thought if we are flipping already, we might as well personalize it more and change things that we feel are not interesting to our students, right? So we can have a lot more personalization here. And this is something I think might get teenagers specifically more motivated because instead of the sentences that I have here, if we were talking, I don't know, about the new recording of Taylor Swift's album, they are probably going to have stronger opinions and they want to use them in class, right? So personalization is something I would go for in terms of engaging teenagers and adults too, right? I think this is something that works for all ages here. Yeah. Good. Other questions that you would like me to answer, send them via chat, please, or via question in the Q&A here. But to wrap this up, the message I want to leave here with you is, thanks, Vision. The message that I wanted to share here with you is, flip learning is a very, very powerful tool. Like a lot of things in the past 2 years, we have been kind of like throwing the water to do it, right? We have had to adapt to new technologies. We have had to adapt to new interactions. Speaking classes in online classes are, something else, right? There are all sorts of technical issues. So we have adapted to that. We are in a moment in which we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. We are preparing. Some of you might already be 100% in face-to-face classes. Some of you might be 100% online classes, but there's no going back in terms of the things we have learned and the tools that we have acquired. And I, for one, cannot go back to the non-flipped version of classes because it has allowed me to make time for things that I need time in class. And I'm talking about giving feedback. I'm talking about repeating speaking tasks. These are things that we need more time. We always need more time. And flipping the classes has given me a lot more time. So this is something I intend to keep using in face-to-face classes as well. right? So I hope you have gotten some ideas that you found interesting there. And I hope to hear from you. You can follow us on Instagram. This is our Troika.br. Uh, my son has just arrived. You can follow us there. I put here the link for the teacher trainers that we're having in January. So we're going to have a face-to-face training course. And there's another one that is online. So check it out. Hope to see you at our headquarters next year. All right. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, right? Thanks a lot.